You'd think that sometimes we would get that message, that the Spirit is so journeying with us in our own lives, even amidst all of the crises of disasters that are going on in our lives. And disasters and crises are nothing new. They're something that has happened to people of old, and they're happening to people of today. You only had to look at our Old Testament reading this morning to understand that people went through all sorts of circumstances, even when they believed in God. I think sometimes as Christians we believe that if we believe in God, or if we have faith enough, that nothing bad's going to happen to us. Sometimes I think our theology teaches us that, but the reality is that the whole of the Old Testament and much of the New Testament shares with us that the people of faith, the faithful people, went through everything that everybody else went through. In our Old Testament reading, the book of Exodus, I love the listening and sharing in the stories of the Israelites and how they were not only tested in their faith, but they also had to rely on the grace, the mercy of God in all of their journeying with God. A wonderful story this morning that taught to us and reminded us of just what it's like when you're out there on a limb. When you're out there, you're no longer in the safety net of the community, even if the community is not one that you liked. But you're no longer in the safety of the community, and you're out there on a limb following someone who believes in God. This time it was Moses. Here were the Israelites. These were persecuted folks who had been born into slavery for many, many years. And Moses had gone to Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go." And over again, Pharaoh would get to that point of saying, "Yeah, we're going to let the people go." And then just at the last minute, Pharaoh would say, "Ha, caught you out." And the people would not be allowed to go until one day in this feast that we call now Passover in the Jewish tradition. There was the firstborn who was to be sacrificed. And in the midst of that disaster, Pharaoh said, "For God's sake, get your people out of here. Let them go." And Moses led the Israelites into the desert and into the wilderness. And over again, you see how the Israelites rebelled against what Moses was doing, questioning whether God was truly present, whether God was truly with them. In the story today, they're arguing because they don't have water. And they're looking for water in the desert, and they're trying to figure out how are they going to survive. Here you are, Moses, you've taken us out of Egypt. At least there was water back there. At least there was comfort back there. We have selective memory sometimes about what's really going on in our lives. And they had selective memory that day about what it was really like back in slavery. And they were driven out. And here they are now complaining because there is no water. Now, this isn't the first time that they have complained to Moses. They'd complained before and had seen the evidence of God's hand on their lives. Many of you may be familiar with the story when they had no food and manna would come down from heaven. And that manna was to be collected every day, because if they didn't collect it every day and they tried to keep it for the next day, it had already gone bad. And so they were already tested God on many occasions in this journey that they were having. And here they are now complaining because there's no water. No food, no water. Woe is me. Disasters all around. Surely it would be better off to go back to the place where we just came from in Babylonian exile. And here they are now complaining there's no water. And so Moses, who's obviously extremely frustrated, here's a leader who truly believes that God has called him in his life, that God is leading these people to a promised land somewhere around the horizon. I always find it interesting, this is a side note, but if anyone's ever been to Israel or had actually been on that journey where they wandered for 40 years or more, you will forever wonder how on earth they got lost. Because I want to tell you, it takes about 3 days to journey from where they came to where they went, and I don't know what they did for how many other years that they traveled and wandered. I have this wonderful image of them following Moses round and round and round in circles. You ever done that for your own journey? And it's like, I think I've been there before. I think I've been in that place before. In England, we have roundabouts, and there are some circles, I think you call them here. There's a couple in West Hollywood, and it always feels like you're going round and round that roundabout over and over again, thinking to yourself, I've seen this road before. I'm sure that Moses was extremely frustrated as a leader. Not only wondering where God was leading him, but why these people were persecuting him. He'd just been faithful to God. faithful to what God was doing, faithful to where God was leading. And here they are complaining over and over again. I think if I was Moses, I would probably just said, I'm going to hand in my resignation and leave these people to their own devices. But Moses was faithful in his calling and in his leadership. And whenever they complained, he would just go to God and say, I'm tired of these people, but you called me to lead them, and you called me. So here we are again, God. I have another request for you. These folks are looking for water of life. They're looking for water that will sustain them on this journey. And here we are out here in the desert, and I don't know where water is, and God gives Moses another instruction. He says, just go ahead of them, take some of the elders and the leaders with you, and take your staff and hit the rock, and the rock will produce water. Water for life. The great mystery of our faith is looking for water of life. Now, sometimes we look for physical water, but as Christians, we're called to look for that water of life that is for all of us. That water of life that pours and flows out of the grace of Jesus. We're looking for water this morning. I believe that we might, as we come into church this morning, we're looking for that water of life, that sustaining water. Right. That water that will wash over us. That water that will reassure us and refresh us this morning. In the world, as we live it right at this very moment, it's a dry land. There's so much drought going on, and I'm not talking about the drought of personal drought. We live in Los Angeles. We know what it likes to live in a desert, and we're on a water shortage. But I'm not talking about that water this morning. I'm talking about that spiritual water that each and every one of us is looking for to be refreshed in as we come out of whatever's going on in our own personal worlds. That water of life that we thirst for and that we look for. And just as God instructed Moses to tap the stone so that water might flow out, Jesus is inviting us to tap the stones of our own lives. The places in our own lives where we have allowed to get drought and dirty and dusty. There is a great hunger for spirituality in our world right now. And many, many folks in their own place of disaster are looking to God one more time and saying, where is this water of life? Where is this sustaining water that will not only refresh me in the dry times of the desert, but that will refresh me as I grow deeper and closer to the presence of the Holy? Sisters and brothers, we have to look into our own lives at these very moments and ask ourselves, what have we allowed to become dusty? Where are the stones in our own lives that we need to take the staff and hit so that the waters of life might flow freely amongst us one more time? Where is it that we have allowed spirituality to become a second place in our lives rather than first place? Where is it that we have not allowed God to truly refresh us and relied on the things of the world rather than the things of the Spirit? What are those moments in our own lives? And this is not about judgment. Each and every one of us does it over and over again. It's like wandering around in our desert for 40 years. But we're called this morning as we come into this church to be refreshed by the living water of Christ and to tap into that place of spirit that can overwhelm us with the mystery of God.